Brian, and as I said to them on Saturday when they asked me, I said, Brian already asked me the day of his mother's funeral, because for Carmel's funeral, they asked me to do a few words of remembrance, and Brian said to me afterwards, man, I'm booking you now, because I like your style. Oh, this is for Brian. So it's extremely hard to believe that Brian Tighe is gone from us. His larger-than-life personality will be unforgettable, and the memories and stories of this amazing man will carry all of us through the dark days ahead. Brian grew up on Olive Street, right next door to our family. Very early in life, our families began the journey into everlasting friendship. There were 5 two-story co-op homes built right alongside each other. Between the Mullins, the Tighes, the Martins, the Baldwins, and the Currys, our parents populated the earth with over 40 children. Mind you, my parents, Bunny and Hank, were responsible for almost half that. It was truly amazing to think of those 5 families could move into a new neighborhood, many complete strangers, and become extended family to one another. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, our families loved and cared for each other, and our parents never had to worry about us, because if we weren't in our own yard, we were in one of the neighbors' yards. And we all knew that when that 8:30 whistle blew, we had to go home. I talked to Barb the other night about what it was like growing up with Brian, he being the only boy. I thought he would have been the complete boss, controlling his sisters, telling them what to do, but Barb said it was the complete opposite. He did whatever those girls told him to do. And he did it without hesitation. Barbara remembers, and this is a good memory because it's so long ago, playing nurse with Brian, and he always had to be the patient. Brian said Barb would do anything for his sisters, and I mean anything. And speaking of anything, first of all, is there any cops or insurance agents?
We got one in the family.
Well, it's too late anyway, he's gone. Colleen bought a home on Curran Street. There was an old barn on the property, and Colleen asked her big brother Brian to get rid of it. Well, of course, Brian would do that for Skinny. One night while she was at back shift, the old barn went on fire. The fire was extinguished, and the insurance came to see Colleen the next day. He asked her what were the contents of the barn, and of course Colleen answered, nothing much of any value, while the insurance agent opened the charred doors and found burnt remains of a snowblower, a lawnmower, a generator, a kerosene heater, and many, many other items. Colleen was shocked. The insurance determined that the kerosene heater must have been the cause of the fire. And they settled her claim, and she received a bundle of money, enough to replace her barn, and to build one for Jackie too. How all that trash got there in the barn remains a mystery, but I have a feeling that Brian might be answering to the big fella out there right now. Another story we heard over the last couple of days was the time that poor Madonna was going through a difficult time financially. And her brother Brian invited her out for a couple of drinks to pick up her spirits. Well, after a couple, Brian excused himself and said he'd be back in a few minutes as he left the table. Well, what felt like an eternity waiting for him to return, Brian finally came in and ordered another drink for them. Soon he suggested that they head home. It was getting late. As he and Donna arrived at her house, they found the front door open, and it was obvious that someone had broke into her house. Very upset, she called the police. Officers arrived and took statements and made details of the list of items that were stolen. Donna was a little suspicious, and she asked Brian before the police arrived if he had anything to do with this. And he said, Donna, be quiet now. And when they get here, just cry. Well, weeks later, another insurance claim was settled, and Madonna's financial woes were over. Again, I had the feeling that Brian might be answering to that little big fella. Brian was a little older than me, but I can still remember the many go-karts that he built, and he raced those down Maham Street, always coming home with a trophy, which his mother proudly displayed. Speaking of his mom, Brian was her golden child, her special little boy, who would never do anything wrong. His father, Jackie, didn't always agree with Carmel's clouded vision of Brian, but what Carmel said went, which allowed Brian many opportunities to escape the wrath of his father. On one such occasion, when Brian came home with a less than impressive report card, and of course Carmel assured him, "I know you tried your best, honey," and for him not to worry that she would talk to his dad about it. So she went on to hide the report card on top of the fridge. Jackie came home from work that day, and Carmel was in the kitchen preparing a beautiful pot of homemade baked beans. And suddenly, Jack found the report card, and he flipped. Carmel got so upset with them, she threw the pot of beans at him. And they landed all over the wall. "Don't upset my boy, Jackie." And he knew well enough that he got that situation wrong. And that happened many times throughout Brian's life, much to his delight. And as I said, Brian would do anything for his family. One year, his dad asked him to go buy a tree at a tree lot, and he gave him the cash for the purchase. Brian and his buddy George decided to buy some beer instead. And as all of you might be aware, Brian liked to have a little social drink once in a while. So completing their day of socializing, Brian realized he couldn't go home without a tree. So he and his buddy headed up to town to a tree farm after dark and borrowed not one, not two, but four. Riding home, the car behind them kept flashing their lights at them, but Brian convinced his accomplice to keep on driving until they arrived home without any trees. The trees had fallen off the truck. Well, Brian couldn't have any of this. He could not go home without a tree to his father, so he headed uptown, and he borrowed a tree from a local dealer who had gone home for the evening. Can you imagine what Jackie Tighe would have said had he known that the tree that was delighting his Christmas was stolen? And I say, God help you, Brian, if he knows now. As you all know, Brian was a man of impeccable taste. He was the finest of dressers, and his physical appearance was so important to him. You could be certain that his comb could be found in his shirt pocket for easy access. Even on the way to the OR his last time, he asked if someone would comb his hair. As important as his appearance was to him, more important was a pristine car. Never a speck of dirt could be found anywhere in a vehicle that was owned by him. And even the day before he went into hospital for the last time, he asked Skinny, who was dying with the flu, if she could wash his truck. He even told her that, fresh air would be good for you. He really was one of a kind. For those of you who really knew Brian, you know that he loved a good laugh, a good drink, and a good time. And he always made sure that anyone in his company enjoyed the same. Brian lived large from the time he was young till his passing. He'll be truly missed by his gang of merry bandits up there, his partners in crime, George Chops, Bruce, Jookie, Frankie, Babe, Snooch, and Willie. He truly loved you guys, and he cherished your friendship. Most important to Brian were his children. His daughters Elena and Briley, and his pride and joy, his only son Jackson. Sharing conversation the other night with the three of you moved me so deeply because I could see the tremendous love, respect, and admiration that you have for your father. Jackson shared the story when he was only 6 years old, and his dad, being the go-kart expert, built a red truck for him in Briley for the coal dust days. And of course, they won first place. Nothing was too good for my boy, as Brian fondly referred to Jackson. Upon graduation from university this past year, Brian beamed with pride as Jackson walked across the stage to receive his diploma. And from the audience comes a loud voice, "My boy!" He was so proud of you, Jackson. You truly were his boy that could be compared by no other, because you were, in your dad's eyes, you were perfection. I love the story you shared about visiting your father in the hospital and asking your voice about some girl troubles you were having. He straight up told, in no uncertain terms, that he was the wrong person to ask advice from. And you know what those words were. Riley shared some great stories about her dad too, from her bath times with her dad and his drinking buddies, to her dad coming home late at night with the boys and sneaking into the nursery to gaze upon his sleeping princess. His heart was so full of pride for his Riley. Riley said some of her fondest memories of her dad came from in the form of texting. Yes, Brian was an avid texter, and he was the king of emojis. Besides the king of rock and roll. She said, Dad would text me at work and ask, are you making people smile, my gift? Followed by a dozen emojis. Brian used to sing the song, You Are My Sunshine, to her often, and she received many texts that would say those very words, You Are My Sunshine, with WSRG behind it, when skies are gray. Followed by another handful of emojis. Bridie loved and respected her dad, but she feared ever taking a boy home to meet Brian because of her first experience with this. The guy's name was Mark. The guy's name was Mark, and Brian suggested that her friend Mark could become a mark on the wall. His oldest child, Lana, shared stories of receiving messages and voicemails from her dad singing, I just called to say I love you, and he'd just hang up. Every text she started from him would start with, oh my baby, and end with a variety of emojis. Lana's husband recalls the time that he tried to call Brian to ask permission to marry Lana. His plan was set, and he wanted to ask Brian first before he proposed that night. Calling from work, Brian didn't recognize the number and assumed it was a bill collector, so he didn't answer. But John didn't give up. He called and called and called, and finally Brian answered, and with a few swear words to the person on the other end, what do you want? Brian, it's John. I'm just calling to ask for Lana's hand in marriage. Oh, okay, you're looking for permission from me, for my baby. You can marry her. Lana shared the story of her graduation, and I love this one. Her dad was so proud of her that he took 11 by 14 graduation photograph, strapped her in the seat beside him, drove downtown, up and down Plummer Avenue, stalking people and saying, look at my baby. He was so proud of these kids. Brian would say that he did a lot of things wrong in life, but one thing they did right was having 3 beautiful children who were intelligent, loving, amazing individuals. He would say that he couldn't believe that he would ever have a child graduate from high school, let alone 3 who completed university degrees. Brian's grandchildren, Ellie and Cal, were the cherry on his cake. Say the names and his face would light up like a light bulb. Your papa was so in love with both of you. Even through Brian's stubbornness, we all know he had a little of that, He could drive his children and his sisters crazy sometimes when you would try to help him with tough decisions about his health, give him suggestions on how to improve his life, try to talk to him when he really didn't want to talk to you. You guys were all his rocks. You all loved Brian through the good and the bad, and Lord knows he could push the bad a whole lot of times. But he knew he was loved, and he never worried about the consequences. He knew for certain that you would be there for him, and you absolutely were. Lana, Riley, and Jackson, it was quite amazing to watch the three of you over the last week as Brian's earthly life was ending. You did everything humanly possible for Brian with no regrets. He would have been so proud of the three of you. You allowed your dad to die with dignity and peace. I want to say to Beth, Karen, and little Karen that the three of you added so much to Brian's life. We all know that he did things that seemed unforgivable, but the three of you loved him in your own way, despite his mistakes. You saw who Brian could be, and you loved him. I know, little Karen, that you had hoped for a long relationship into old age with Brian. As the saying goes, grow old with me, the best is yet to be. But that was not to be. But everyone, including his children and his sisters, saw how much you loved Brian and how important you and your children were to him. Although Brian lived a short life, he lived it large and full. To know Brian was to love him. Brian's eyes have closed and that infectious smile is no more. But he left us each with a lifetime of memories. Thank you, Brian, for your love and friendship that each of us here today had the pleasure of sharing with you. Life will not be the same without you. Rest peacefully, Brian, until we meet again.